The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Emergency podcast, maybe one of the biggest emergency podcasts we've ever done. Sam, how you doing?
I am on vacation, to steal a line from Stephen A. Smith. Mike, you, for that matter, are also on vacation, and this is maybe the most ridiculous situation we have found ourselves in yet, as we are never safe. We joked about it on the last episode, and here we are having to react to trade news. I'm okay. I feel like we have a lot of things to process, and I just was in my car by myself for 6 hours, and I'm really, my brain is firing on like a million different cylinders at once. So this will be an interesting half hour or however long this episode goes.
Yeah, I think it's hard to almost figure out where to even start with this, because we could start with the fact that Deandre Ayton was traded away from the Phoenix Suns, and I think that's obviously the biggest headline here. And then with the second piece being what the Suns got in return. And then on the broader spectrum of the entire NBA, Damian Lillard, shockingly, was traded to the Milwaukee Bucks. So even if we're talking about what matters to us, of course, we're going to talk about the Suns angle. But just on the other side of that, we're talking about a massive, league-shaking trade. Well, Giannis was, of course, threatening the Bucks, and of course the Suns found a way to get involved with that. My read on this entire situation, and I told you this at some point in DMs, Sam, was that if the Suns were willing and, dare I say, excited to get Jusuf Nurkic in any deal, they were probably going to be involved regardless of where Damian Lillard went, because I have a feeling most teams that were trying to trade for Damian Lillard were not really excited about figuring out the salary situation to get both Damian Lillard and Jusuf Nurkic back.
Nobody, whether it would have been Miami, Toronto, Milwaukee, didn't matter. Nobody else would have wanted Jusuf Nurkic. So the Suns were doing those other teams a favor in facilitating this trade, and you're absolutely right. They could have facilitated a trade for any one of these teams, any one of these potential packages. Doesn't make it, for the record, a good deal for the Suns, but that's just how the cookie crumbles. So let's start with Deandre Ayton a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Can we? Okay, go ahead.
Closing the book. Mm-hmm. We say it sometimes. Our podcast is, we're about to enter year 6. Our first ever episode was celebrating the drafting of Deandre Ayton. So this
was the day after he was drafted.
This feels to me like closing the book on a chapter of, sorry to be melodramatic, but again, brain is like all over the place right now. Like my personal life.
Are you quitting the podcast right now?
I'm not quitting the podcast. I'm not going to do anything dramatic. As some people know, just go search in our 1-star reviews that have been left on Apple before. You and I have been hard on Deandre Ayton over the years. Now, I think we've always tried to be fair and like objective in the sense of data-based in our analysis of who he is as a player. So I always thought that those criticisms were coming from somewhere. They weren't just invented. But even despite the complicated relationship we've had with this guy over the years, it's weird that it's over. And I don't know that. I mean, just I know we've been talking about this for literally 24 months, maybe even more. He's been in trade rumors for 2+ years, which is why maybe the Suns felt like they had their backs to the wall and they just could not allow themselves to go into another media day with these awkward interviews, awkward questions directed towards Deandre Ayton. They could not go into another season with this hanging over their heads, that they were willing to kind of accept a package of crap in return. Or maybe they really feel that this package of crap is awesome. Maybe they really believe in these players that they're getting back.
I think there's a little bit of both of that in there. Now, when we talk about this podcast and discussing Deandre Ayton, yes, it's been a bit of a road. It's the only player where if you have any sort of criticism for him, it's not about the basketball. It's now about whose fault it is that he's playing badly, right? That's kind of how we've had these conversations over the years, and now I guess we're beyond that. But when you talk about whether the Suns had their backs against the wall with media day, sure, I think there's a little bit of that, but I also think they spent the entire offseason trying to trade him, and this is his value. This is what it was. Look, if we look at this trade package the Suns got back, and by the way, they had to include Toumani Camara, which is a player that we were excited about in this trade in order to get back what they got back, partially salary-wise and maybe for other reasons that the Portland Trail Blazers probably liked how he looked in Summer League, and as a team with a lot of minutes for a lot of young guys, they probably wanted to take a little bit of a chance on Toumani Camara. So Ayton and Toumani out, and the Suns get Yusuf Nurkic. No surprise there. That's the only name we knew about so far. Nasir Little, Keon Johnson, and then from the Bucks, the least likable player in the NBA, a player that I have yet to enjoy any moment of in his time in the NBA, Grayson Allen.
I think that's a little unfair to Grayson Allen. I don't think he's more unlikable than Patrick Beverley.
It's close.
And maybe a couple of other guys. I think you could put together a solid all NBA
unlikable team.
More unlikable than Grayson Allen team. So you've got like 5 players. You could count that on one hand.
And listen, there are the nuanced conversations about how the Suns viewed the fit of each of these players. And by the way, they have more players than they can carry into the regular season, so players need to be cut at some point. But I do think 3 of those players are pretty safe based on their salaries alone, and that's Nurkic, Little, and Allen. Sorry, Keon Johnson. I mean, maybe Keon Johnson has a chance to make the roster, but they don't have to decide yet. And we can talk about the fit of each of those players, and we will, and how they fit and what it will look like with them. But if we're just going to look at it as the big picture here, this trade and what the Suns got back for their only number 1 pick that they've ever selected is an indictment on everyone involved. It's an indictment on Deandre and his value and his inability to perform after he was given a max contract. Some of the worst playoff performances we've seen on the Suns in a while last season. It's an indictment on the Suns front office for not trading him sooner when his value was higher. They had opportunities to trade him in the past. They didn't do it, and that resulted in whatever they got back on this trade return. And it's just not a good look for anyone. And the fact that it had to be done now at this point, I have no doubt that the Suns wanted something better than this package. I know people are upset with it, and if they're looking at it from the perspective of we should have just kept Deandre Ayton, it's pretty damn clear the Suns weren't looking at it like that. It was, we need to get rid of him, and we're going to get back as much as we possibly can get back, and this is the best they could come up with. And to me, I think there are reasons that this team could look good. This team will look good.
This team
will
look
good,
good,
especially when they're healthy.
Regardless of this trade, this team was in top 3, top 4 total contender conversation before this trade, and they are still there after this trade.
Yes,
how you feel about the trade will not change that.
100%. And I think there's even versions of this team that become a little more interesting with versatility when you have just more interesting players to choose from, which now the Suns do. But it's just a complete and utter disappointment to the end of the roller coaster ride that was Deandre Ayton, that of course had high highs. 2021 playoffs going into the NBA Finals, he played really well. The New Orleans Pelicans series, the last time he played well in the playoffs, arguably, was the last high. And then, of course, the lows have been since then. The Dallas Mavericks series, both series this last postseason, and last season where I think he was a complete disaster defensively for the entire season. And now it all just sort of putters to an end with a trade package of 0 potential all-stars. We'll start there, where some people thought Deandre Ayton would be a potential all-star, including the 2 people speaking on this podcast today when he was drafted. And
not even just when he was drafted, as recently as, I would say, after that finals run, we were still saying it was possible. As recently as after that finals run, I was saying maybe a Defensive Player of the Year candidate going into the season after that.
Right.
And then we only saw regression from there.
And what we see is a team that did not trust him, essentially. They did not trust that he would be capable of being good, consistent enough to now put the championship hopes and aspirations of Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, and Kevin Durant on his back, which is what it would have taken in order for the Suns to decide they wanted to keep DeAndre Ayton. And I think it says a lot about what they think about him. Regardless of what people listening to this think about him, it says a lot about what they think about him, and that's that they don't trust him.
The players.
The players,
you mean?
Or the front office, because
primarily the front office.
The
No. But I want to make this point. I want to make this distinction because obviously the front office made this move. Obviously, James Jones, DeAndre Ayton was never exactly his guy to begin with. There are reasons for Ayton to have lost the trust of this front office regime in particular, but I think it extends beyond that. I think there is an element of Kevin Durant and Devin Booker hold some sway in this organization. And the front office is interested not just in terms of like players who fit on the court with them, but also probably what they're thinking a little bit off the court. Like just in terms of their personalities, in terms of how they conduct themselves as basketball players, guys who don't quit, guys who are relentless, guys who, sorry to be corny, but always give 110%, whatever, guys who are hoopers.
Yeah.
I don't know that DeAndre Ayton and what we've seen out of him in the past 2 years where he quit in two different playoff series, essentially, that the players had any interest in continuing that relationship. That it was just about, like, just firing Monty Williams wasn't going to be enough to move past that. Just getting rid of Chris Paul wasn't going to be enough to move past that either. I think there was a stained relationship. And obviously, Book is never going to come out and say this out loud because it doesn't serve him to do so. So this.
I'm circling Phoenix versus Portland. Are you not?
Pure,
I'm going to be interested to see
and
the first time DeAndre Ayton gets switched out onto Devin Booker on the perimeter. I'm interested to see it.
We're not saying that they hate each other,
or that he asked for him to be traded. Like, I don't think that's the case either. Yeah,
I don't think they hate each other, but I do believe there was an element of mistrust.
There's zero
Devin
chance.
Booker is in the stage of his career where he needs to win a championship. Things are serious now. I mean, like, he wants to win a championship every year, obviously. But when push comes to shove, did he believe that he could win a championship with DeAndre Ayton as a starting center? There might have just been a fundamental lack of trust there, which necessitated
zero chance they would have done this trade if Devin Booker told them not to. Right? Like, if he said, no, absolutely not, we need DeAndre Ayton to win a championship. Or Kevin Durant, probably both of them. Like, at the very least, they had some level of conversation. Now, I'm not saying, like I said, not saying anyone asked for him to be gone, but I think there's a chance that they said, yeah, whatever, you can get it. Okay, fine. It's fine. We'll just move on from there. We'll have a new team, and that'll be the end of that chapter.
We tried. It didn't work. Let's bring in something else and try and mesh a little bit better. And I don't think that's them. It's certainly not them asking for, hey, Mr. Jones, Mr. Ishbia, please do whatever you can to get us Yusuf Nurkic. That's exactly what we're missing. That'll push us over the top. But maybe it was just a fractured relationship with DA that couldn't be repaired.
Yeah. And look, it's not a great sign that they were willing to accept what they accepted, I would say.
Well,
and look, it's nothing I would. We did, for example, we did a podcast that we came up with, 12 potential DeAndre Ayton trades, 13 at the beginning of the offseason.
This was at the very beginning of the summer, yes.
Where do you think that this trade would have ranked on that podcast? Last? Second to last?
Is it worse than my, I can't even remember most
Corey
of those anymore.
Kispert trade? Is that Daniel Gafford, Corey Kispert?
Corey Kispert was not the centerpiece there, sir. I'll have you know. This would be near the bottom, if not the bottom. Because ultimately the swing factor, and so now we should get into the portion where we're actually talking about what we got back.
And why they did it, because I think that is the most interesting part of this. But yes, go ahead.
So Nurkic is the first part, and we can debate that. We've been talking about Nurkic for the past couple of podcasts anyway. Personally, I think he's a downgrade. However, I think he's clearly demonstrably better at certain things than DeAndre Ayton, but overall I do view him as a downgrade. What the trade hinges on then was always going to be, and you explained this, I think, the last time we talked about it, it was always going to hinge on that second piece. Was the second piece going to be a guy who is a clear upgrade over our current candidates for a fifth starter? And if the answer to that question was going to be yes, i.e. if they got OG Anunoby, or even that's like the best case scenario, but even as the median
Caleb
scenario,
Martin.
I think is what we described it, Caleb Martin.
Which maybe we underplayed that a little, but that would have been really good.
I don't know. If you got but what I do know is I agreed with your assessment, which is that if you got a second player who was going to be, okay, this guy's obviously the fifth starter, that would have been okay. That would have been fair value. You could feel good about that, I think, as a Suns fan. What we actually got here was Grayson Allen as the second best player in this trade, who did start 70 games for the Milwaukee Bucks, the contending Milwaukee Bucks last season, but who I would not say, and has, certain attributes. Maybe we should cover Nurkic before we get into Allen specifically, but I would definitely not say is the clear-cut favorite to be the Suns' fifth starter on opening night. He's just not that.
But
so
if
you were
right?
asking, he
There's
might
a good
be.
chance that he will be at this point, I'd say.
He's in the conversation now, but it's not what you were asking for.
Nope.
He's not a Caleb Martin type. He's certainly not OG Anunoby.
If you stripped away all of the antics from Grayson Allen, you could say, hey, that's a pretty good basketball fit. But they're all there. It's all part of the same package. Now let's start with Nurkic a little bit, though, because we covered what he could be on the last podcast. First of all, people probably won't listen to that one at this point if they haven't already. I recommend going back, at the very least, listen to the second half of that one, because it's about all the other players on the team.
Who are still on the team, thankfully.
Thank
God.
I think we planned that one pretty well, Sam. But now it's real. He's really going to be on the team for as much as he can stay healthy. And I think when I talk about this trade from the perspective of whether or not I like it, I think that it's difficult to even say it's hard to say completely no, because while I don't really like the package as a whole, it's hard to argue with whatever Deandre Ayton was worth at this point. And if the value to the front office was no Deandre Ayton, there's something there. And maybe I don't know exactly what it is at this point, but maybe we will at some point, because you mentioned, Sam, the conversation about the players. Zach Lowe, since the beginning of the offseason, said it's not just Monty Williams who was, in his words, fed up with Deandre Ayton. It's more than that. It's more parts of the organization. Monty Williams is fired. Yeah. Zach Lowe reiterated that same thing not that long ago. Really? Look at this team. There's only two members of the team that are the same as before when Zach Lowe said that, and that's Devin Booker and James Jones. If you lose the trust of those two guys, I don't know what you're going to do at that point.
And James Jones is understandable. We've talked about that for years, how, again, DA was not his guy. For Booker, just thinking about it rationally, if you were a superstar player, and for years the go-to defense, the go-to way that defenses would try to stop you is to trap you on the perimeter, and your best bailout option always in that situation is going to be a pass to the big man in the middle of the floor, and you were passing to a DeAndre Ayton who, even after 5 years, was afraid to put the ball on the floor and make a move to the basket. Or
and if
afraid
he was
to skip
making
passes.
a pass, there was an extra second or two.
Was afraid to
processing
skip
time.
passes to corners and other three-point shooters. Just could not initiate offense. Doesn't mean he was bad at everything on the floor, but just in that very particular situation, you're Devin Booker. You understand that every single year in the playoffs is going to get harder and harder for you as you are in your prime, and defenses are going to throw everything they have to stop you. And if Ayton can't give you anything on offense, if he's not going to help you out in the middle of the floor to be a little bit of a creator, if he's not going to show any growth whatsoever, I mean, yeah, who wouldn't be frustrated? That's the element of like just watching Ayton's game over the past several years that always frustrated me and always frustrated us. That it was unfathomable to me how some people still to this day just could never see that. They could never see how that was a problem. They denied it until the end.
It's the thing about championship teams too. There's a combination of talent and fit that matters, and sometimes the fit outweighs the talent. And the question about whether DeAndre Ayton was the perfect fit on this team, I think, was pretty clear to a lot of people involved in the NBA, at the very least, that they did not believe that he was the perfect fit for this team. Now, is Nurkic? No. I think we can talk about defensively. I think people who are saying that DeAndre Ayton is a clear upgrade defensively than Nurkic, I think there's an argument to be made on your side. Last season wasn't it, though. last season was definitely not it. If you look at some of the rim protection numbers alone from last season, I think Nurkic has him beat by a little bit in those categories. But in general, if you look at the high highs that Deandre Ayton can get, clearly that's much, much, much higher. But if you're a Suns fan who maybe the last few years you thought, wow, the offense looks a lot better when Dario Saric is on the floor, or it flows a lot better when Dario Saric is on the floor. It moves faster. The ball pings around faster. Or maybe you thought that even when Frank Kaminsky was on the floor a little bit. Well, I think James Jones might have thought that too, based on this trade. Because from everything I know, this trade, and by the way, just read between the lines with Gambo, I think this trade is not just, I need to get rid of Deandre Ayton. I think the Suns really like Nurkic. And I think they want him on this team, and I think they think it's going to work really, really well offensively in a way that can maybe move the ball a little faster, a little smoother, maybe some outlet passes, things that Deandre Ayton didn't really ever do, that could get the ball moving faster in transition. And now I think that's what they did. I think that's what they're trying to do. You talked about traps. He's going to pass really well out of those traps, Nurkic. He's got a lot of experience doing it. On the Portland Trail Blazers. And by the way, let's not do all this comparison between the Suns roster and the Portland Trail Blazers roster just because we have both of their centers from last year. They're dramatically different with a dramatically different coach. It's going to look a lot better than that. But I think it's clear they wanted some more skills out of the center position. Now, shooting, You talked about the shooting. That could be the case too. Maybe they believe in his shooting.
That would be great. I mean, he shot 36% from deep last year on 2.3 attempts per game. So demonstrating a real volume kind of for the first time in his career. It would be great if that holds. But mostly I do believe, they're acquiring him for his playmaking talent. There's a massive playmaking gap between what Nurkic can do and what Ayton traditionally was able to do. And that's all great. I mean, I think it could really click offensively and this team could hit a super high offensive ceiling. On the other hand, not all of it makes sense to me. Nurkic is a good screener. He's not an above the rim finisher. His finishing numbers are not very good in general, especially now that he's been around maybe a few too many years and has that injury history. So, if you were expecting to move on from Deandre Ayton, who often frustrated Suns fans as a finesse finisher, Nurkic is another finesse finisher. So
he's not going to jam it.
Yes, that problem was not solved through this trade. There is also, Nurkic is 290 pounds. In some ways, I love that because,
right.
I don't know, he doesn't have a great track record against Jokic, but if you're worried about having a guy on your roster to throw at a Jokic or at a Joel Embiid or whatever in a couple of these big center matchups, like the last couple of big-time marquee center matchups that actually matter in the NBA, okay, I guess it's nice to have a 290-pound guy on your team. You mentioned pace. I think it's possible that the offense does move faster in the half court, but I do worry a little bit now with a 290-pound center about their actual ability to push the pace.
He's not getting down the floor first. It's
He's
all trail
not.
threes. He's going to have to be capable of shooting trail threes in transition if that's how we're going to use him. Whereas Deandre Ayton, what the Suns wanted him to do was beat everybody down the floor, seal, because often he's beating the center down the floor. The center has to pick up the ball. Deandre Ayton has a mismatch. You score in transition. Now, that happened maybe once every few games or so that the Suns would actually score that way. Whereas with Nurkic, he's not going to be the first down the floor. He's nowhere near as athletic as Deandre. And really, the Suns are buying into his mind much more than his body, especially if you factor in injuries.
Yes, you could say that 1,000 times. Yeah,
but I think if you can shoot trail threes, you're still a huge threat in transition, especially because those are often for centers wide open. But outlet passes, I do think matter because he can throw the ball. He can make pretty good reads from long distance. Whereas, look, maybe you want to blame Monty Williams for this, but Deandre Ayton never passed the ball except for directly to Chris Paul from about 3 to 4 feet away, or Devin Booker. There were no long outlet passes from Deandre Ayton, so I think we can expect a little bit more of that with Nurkic and guys out on the break. Guys like Nasir Little, by the way, who might be pretty good in transition if I had to guess.
Sure. Yeah, he's a high-level athlete.
Yeah.
So I know it's not fun to talk about, but you touched on injuries.
And we should talk about defense with him too, but yes.
Sure. I want to ask it. I guess I'll try and phrase it this way. We can't predict the future. I don't know if Nurkic is going to play. Look, in the past 4 seasons, if you want me to read them out, and this is not entirely fair because the Blazers were tanking. They shut him down when they didn't have to.
It's pretty fair. Let's
mostly
subtract
fair.
5 to 10 games at most from it, if you'd like.
10 games. Yeah. Past 4 seasons, he's played 8, 37, 56, and 52 games.
Yeah.
Yikes.
4 seasons. Yeah.
Yikes. So what's interesting about it to me, though, is the fact that the Suns acquired 4 players in this trade, and Nurkic was the only big man. They did not acquire more big man depth.
Yep.
And traditionally, I mean, look, anything could happen in any given season. There's nothing to suggest that Nurkic couldn't have a fully healthy season, and Deandre Ayton only plays 25 games next year. Of course, that could happen. But in the average scenario, the average season, Deandre Ayton is going to play more games than Yusuf Nurkic. We just know that.
Yeah.
Does it concern you now that, like, what happens if Nurkic has his average season of playing 50 games and the Suns did not make a move to get another big man? So now they've got Drew Eubanks.
Yes.
Their third string center, their third string traditional center is either Chimezie Metu or Bol Bol.
Right.
I honestly don't know, but between the two of those guys, who really earns that spot, because both have played power forward. But then the other thing that I think this points to is minutes open up for small ball. Perhaps too many minutes, then you would want to put Kevin Durant through in that kind of situation. It'd be different
if Tumani Kamara was still on the team almost, and you can argue that he could play small ball center more, and he can't. He's gone too.
So, obviously a lot of faith in Drew Eubanks to make this move. But do you have any other takeaways about just the depth chart and the changes to the depth chart? And if they can survive, can this team sustain a Yusuf Nurkic injury that knocks him out for 30 games, 40 games?
Honestly, there are concerns about Nurkic, and we'll talk about his defense in a minute. But if he had 0 health issues, I would just straight up come onto this podcast and say the Suns made a good trade. This is a good trade. But I think the health issues with him are the largest concern. And they have to be, because he's not the only one with them on this team. We're talking about a Suns team that has Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant as well. Kevin Durant hasn't played a full season in a while. Bradley Beal hasn't played a full season in a while. Now Yusuf Nurkic hasn't played a full season in a while. The importance of them all being healthy in the playoffs is high. Is Nurkic's health as important to me as Bradley Beal's and Kevin Durant's? No. Obviously not. It would be great if he was healthy in the playoffs, but if he wasn't, I don't think that completely knocks you out. But I do think it matters, especially in certain matchups, as you noted. He also famously does not like Jokic, from what I've heard, which is kind of an interesting thing to add to the team. Maybe he'll have some people on the Suns who feel the same way, at the very least.
Let me just say, that combined with the Grayson Allen acquisition, say what you will about these guys, but I think the Suns were lacking assholes. I think this roster was seriously missing an asshole component to it that you typically see
every
one or two.
Every championship team has one, it seems
Most
like,
championship,
right?
and we
I guess
lost
the Nuggets
that.
didn't. Did they? I don't know.
No, they didn't. The Nuggets didn't.
Aaron Gordon? We'll give it to Aaron Gordon.
No, Aaron Gordon's a good defender, but he's not a dick. And that's an element of our roster that, some people say maybe it's overrated. We had it in Jay Crowder. We had it in Jay Crowder, then we lost it.
Chris Paul was
we had
one
it
of
in
those
Chris
guys
Paul.
too.
And I suppose we lost it in Chris Paul as well. But we've replenished.
We gave it away.
We replenished that.
It's true.
Grayson Allen will have his moments.
The asshole is replenished.
If you were worried, yes. If you were worried about the Suns actually being a well-liked roster this year, fear not.
Oh, because that was my biggest concern, Sam. Yeah,
Grayson Allen is
People
here.
are going to like us too much. I say it all the time. That was my biggest concern. Nurkic. Okay, now let's just look at something on his stats too. I'll just mention them. Just read them out loud. Last year, 13.3 points per game, 9.1 total rebounds. This was a year. We should mention these are years where he was shooting more and more threes. He's done it for years. Has sort of peaked out at 11.1 rebounds in the previous season, 2.9, 2.8, 3.4, and 4 assists in the previous 4 seasons. The 4 assist season was the one where he only played 8 games, so you can take that with a massive grain of salt, of course. But capable of passing, especially on a team that's going to have the offensive threats that the Suns have. 66% from the free throw line is something I should mention, because it's just Deandre Ayton, for all his faults, was pretty efficient offensively if you were giving him the ball, and that includes the free throw line, even though he didn't get to the line.
Yeah, that's,
and another thing
that's
about
the
Nurkic,
difference.
26 minutes a game last year. I don't think he's going to be playing more than like 25 minutes a game for this team, right?
Yeah. Well, again, I mean, Drew Eubanks has the chance now to carve out a 20-minute per game role for himself, where previously I would have said maybe 15. So Nurkic is not a guy who's going to be starting with them. I'm sure they want him to close, but he's not going to be playing heavy 35, 38, 40-minute games too often.
What do you think about his defense?
It's fine. I mean, this is the part where, people are overblowing it a little bit again. And I don't even necessarily say this based on Nurkic being a plus defender, because I don't believe he is. But it's more based on Ayton just being such a negative last year that people were willing to let go because they were still clinging on to this hope that he's young and he can snap out of it and we can make him motivated again under Frank Vogel. Personally, I never really bought into that argument. Nurkic is not a versatile defender. He's going to be a drop defender. He's going to have a very rigid role in Vogel's scheme, but maybe they like it that way. Maybe they just believe that he can commit to that for 25 minutes per game, and that's how they'll want him to play. And I think his rim protection will not be good, but I think it will be perfectly average, to be honest.
He has a higher amount of shots contested at the rim and a higher amount of the stat that's called rim deterrence. So players more afraid to shoot on him, and he contests more shots still per 75 possessions when he's on the floor than Deandre Ayton. So if that's something that matters to you, then I think that is important. Players also technically last year shot worse when Yusuf Nurkic was defending them than when Deandre Ayton was defending them. And that is on a team with really bad perimeter defense in Portland. I think, I'm not going to make the case that Yusuf Nurkic is a good defender, but I will make the case that Deandre Ayton was a bad defender last year, and that was what the Suns were looking at going into this year and saying, can we afford to place the bet that he will be better on that based on the fact that, he's going to get less shots and we have a new coach? Yeah. They weren't willing to make that bet. They said, okay, Yusuf Nurkic, technically by some stats, a better defender than Deandre Ayton last year on a worse team. And maybe the gamble with Nurkic, of course, is games that he doesn't play. But, there was a point in the playoffs where the Suns closed a game, and I know I bring this up a lot, but there's an analogy here. The Suns closed a game with Jock Landale on the floor because in order to have their best... You're going to be bringing this up
in the year 2068.
He's a max player.
Do you remember when Jock Landale...
On my deathbed, I'm going to bring
on
it
your
up.
deathbed, yeah.
The last thing I'll say. They closed the game with Jock Landale in order to have their best chance at winning. Basically, they're saying, without Deandre Ayton on the floor, we have our best chance of winning this game. This trade is like the trade version of that. Basically, they're saying now without him, we're going to be better. Now, who that's going to be? Nurkic, Eubanks, Metu, if he finds a role somehow, or Bol if he becomes a much, much better defender, then yeah, okay, yeah. They clearly believe that. This is that version of that trade. Now, by all measures of people that are just sort of applying their eye test to this, Deandre Ayton is a better defender. And look, I agree with them because Deandre Ayton is a more versatile defender. He's more athletic and he's faster. At his peak,
his ceiling
is one of the best
close.
Defenders, one of the best big man defenders in the NBA at his peak. But he is not at his peak for long periods of time and has not done that consistently throughout his entire career. So this is what we're looking at Nurkic. The stats are not bad for him last year based on what we see. The eye test is not great for Nurkic. And, you can make the case that the other way around is the case for Deandre Ayton, where the eye test is good, but the stats are bad.
Some people are probably going to laugh at this. If the haters are even listening anymore, they probably turned us off long ago. But we kind of weren't hard enough on Deandre Ayton. Is that funny to say? Like, I think there was so much focus going to his offensive misgivings over the past few years. The stuff that was instantly noticeable, like, again, the lack of forceful finishing or the lack of self-creation or these other offensive elements, that's always the stuff that we were at war over online, that I think people were kind of willing to give him a pass on the defense. And they kind of gave him a really long leash and almost didn't even notice the extent to which he just creaked back. Just slipped back and devolved.
I think the part that I think bothered me the most is, one, of course, it was his max contract. And I made the deal with myself before the year that this is the year where you can't judge him based on he's young and he's improving. He's now making $30 million. He has to be compared to players who make $30 million. But the thing that I think disturbed me the most about his defense last year is how simplified the Suns made it. He stopped switching onto the perimeter pretty much entirely. They never used him to trap guys on the perimeter. His role was consistent. Be the drop defender. I think it was, I looked at the stats before we had this conversation on the last time we talked about it. Over 90% of the time, essentially, he was a drop defender. And it still didn't work. They still couldn't find ways to get it to work. So to simplify it, to break down everything that we needed it to be and just take it to its barest bones, and for it to still fall apart, I think, was just a really, really bad sign. And especially, by the way, we're talking about what Frank Vogel does. It's not simple. He's going to throw a lot of different schemes out there. He's going to need a versatile defender. Now, whether that be Nurkic, I don't know. Maybe he's going to play more with different guys at center. Maybe it's Bol sometimes. Maybe it's Metu sometimes. Maybe Eubanks is out there chasing guys in a trap. I'm not entirely sure what it's going to be, but I know in the past he's iced. He's done traditional drop coverage. He's done box and one. These are all things that he's done that the Suns were not capable of doing with Deandre Ayton on the floor last year. So, all of this, of course, leading to where we are today. Now, do you have anything else you want to add about Yusuf Nurkic?
I think we should move on to the other guys.
Who do you want to talk about first? Little or Allen?
I mean, can we talk about them both just under the context of, are both of these guys going to be in the playoff rotation? Are neither of them going to be in the playoff rotation?
It's a good question.
What's your initial assessment?
Well,
are these top 8, top 9 players in your view, based on what the Suns roster now is?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're looking at what, year 6 for Grayson Allen and year 5 for Nasir, and
yes.
Nasir Little's going.
Yes.
Nasir Little's going to be 23.
Except Nasir Little is significantly younger than Grayson Allen. Grayson Allen, is about to be 28 in 2 weeks.
I think that Grayson Allen is most likely going to be in the playoff rotation for the Suns based on the way the roster is currently constructed, and I think that Nasir Little has a chance because he's so young and has the ability to improve, that there's a chance that he is in it. It's just much less of a guarantee. The problem with Little, even though he did shoot relatively well last year, 36% on 3 attempts per game. And by the way, that's only in 18 minutes a game. If you're wondering why the attempts are relatively low there, let's see, what is it per 36? It is 5.8 attempts. And he shot 36%, so that's pretty good, but it's not something that we can really expect him to do. The thing about Little, I think, is, we did a little research on him before, you and I believe, and I saw, the first thing I did was look at his size, look at his height, look at his position, and then I'm guessing this is what you did as well. Google his wingspan. Did you do that?
I've not done that yet. I imagine it's...
Do you want to guess what it is?
7 foot.
7'2".
Yeah.
And then you go, oh, that's
James
why James Jones
likes him.
He's got a type, man.
2 types. If you're on the wing, you need to have a 7-foot wingspan, and if you're a big man, you need to be white and pass. And that's that's what it is.
So you see his wingspan, you see his potential, and the position he plays. In that he's a player that could play small forward, but with a 7'2" wingspan, I think the Suns could probably play with him guarding guys on the perimeter and seeing how he does when he's chasing guys on the perimeter. Because when you have that level of wingspan, even if you can't move your feet fast enough, you're going to get in people's way. You're going to make things difficult. You're going to make passes harder. There's going to be a lot of things that can happen in these scenarios that will be good, I think, for the Suns. And, is Nasir Little a player to be excited about? No, not necessarily. But
let me just say it right now. No.
Are we as a team desperate for young players who can improve over time? Yeah.
Here's
Yeah.
Can I just say, so Nazir Little statistically has not been good in his career.
He's been bad.
in the NBA for 4 years on a mostly bad team, has not been good. Furthermore, I have him personally just like down in the depth chart past all of the guys who've actually
all
done
the external
something in the NBA.
development guys from the last pod. Yeah.
Yes,
he's
exactly.
Behind them.
He's behind Keita Bates-Diop. He's behind Yuta Watanabe. He's behind Josh Okogie. If you include the guards too, he's behind Eric Gordon and Grayson Allen. So that should suggest that he's really not going to get playing time. Where he could maybe become interesting is that, remember, it's getting increasingly difficult with the new CBA for the Suns to flip contracts into other players. Nazir Little is signed for the next 4 seasons. He just signed a new deal, making $6.2 million this year, 6.7, 7.2, and then 7.7 over the next 4 years. Why is that relevant? Because that's
how much Torrey Craig makes. No,
yeah, it's it's not how much
the Suns could finally get him back. I don't even know what he makes. I'm sorry.
It's maybe in the vicinity where it becomes useful down the line if you want to flip him for some player that's on like a
round picks. Yeah.
Well, yeah, for some player who's on like a biannual exception or like a tax-paying mid-level exception, he's that type of contract where maybe you can flip it. But he needs to be worth something, and right now I don't really think he's worth anything. So it's hard too. We don't have any picks left. And I am bummed. I am straight up bummed that we got rid of Toumani Camara.
Yeah, me too.
I was really excited. I mean, what do I even watch? Seriously, what the fuck do I watch Summer League for every year? the past 2 years, 3 years. Why couldn't it have been Ish Wainwright at least?
Right. Well, you know why.
Give them Ish Wainwright.
Kamara was good in Summer League. That's probably the last thing that made this trade finalize and actually happen, was including Kamara in it. Even though the Suns, I don't know. Would you be more excited about Kamara than Little? I'm guessing you're saying yes now, right?
Yes, I would.
And Keon Johnson as well.
Yes.
Now let's just talk about Grayson Allen too, because I think Nasir Little, we'll talk about him. And look, he can improve still. This is a young player, and I don't know what the environment was like in Portland, but maybe in a new environment with different coaching style, different guys, maybe he'll improve. You know, maybe people are saying the same about Deandre and going to Portland. But Grayson Allen, I think we can be pretty sure that, look, he might start. I mean, we just mentioned it. Like he started 70 games last year of the 72 games he played, and 61 in the year before that on a good team. And last year he averaged 10 points, shoots 90% from the free throw line. He shot basically 40% from 3 in the last 2 seasons.
For his entire career, actually, he's 39.5 for his career from deep.
Yeah, so consistent, a good shooter. And, he actually has, averages 2.3 assists on that team as well, which is pretty high for a player with low usage and probably doesn't dribble much. He can shoot threes. He can drive to the rim. He's a tenacious defender. Is he good? Yeah, he's not terrible as a defender, I would say. And you could see, to be honest, as much as I want to poo-poo all of this, you could see why the Suns would want Grayson Allen on this team, even though he's, like I called him, one of the least likable players in the NBA. He's a good fit.
He hits threes. He takes on challenging defensive assignments, and he's a dick. I mean, to me, it makes sense. Grayson Allen is not the aspect of the trade that I'm unhappy with. Honestly, overall, I don't like the value that the Suns got back. But I do think, I am willing to admit, that there is a chance that addition by subtraction kicks in and Nurkic really locks in and the drop defense just works. And Grayson Allen's hitting 40% of his threes, and they are a much better team. Lo and behold.
You sound like CJ McCollum. That's basically CJ McCollum's version of this trade, right?
Can we just get, before we kind of sign off here, can I just get a grade from you, an initial grade for the front office here?
How dare you make me do that?
Come on. You don't give me much often.
Okay.
I don't ask you to rank things.
What is this scale that I am grading this on? What
do you mean? What's the scale?
What am I comparing it to? Because this is what's hard for me, because it's not like they panicked and then decided to trade Deandre and traded him.
Don't grade it. That's a decent point. Don't grade it compared to a hypothetical OG Anunoby trade, which maybe was never an option, right?
It was.
Are the
and
Suns
by the
a better
way,
basketball
we tried
team,
to tell
Mike?
you this. If anyone believed OG Anunoby was going to be on the team, we tried to tell you in our last few episodes that we didn't ever think that was going to happen.
Are the Suns a better basketball team? Yes or no?
I think
in the average
on the aggregate over the course of an entire season, yeah, they might be. To be honest, they actually.
So that to me would imply like at least a B grade.
I'm going to say I'm going to say a B minus because of the injury concerns. But I'm going to preface this with the fact that the caveat that I believe that Deandre Ayton's trade value was really low. If he was valued the way that some of you fans value him by GMs and front offices, he wouldn't. First of all, he wouldn't be on a team that's tanking. He would be on a team that's trying to win. And a lot of people, by the way, have wanted DeAndre Ayton to be on a team that was tanking for a while. So congratulations. You got your wish. You get to see him with the ball a lot. Maybe. I guess.
Can we just make a promise? I'm not gonna watch probably Blazers games at all because they're gonna be terrible.
I'm not.
I'll check in.
You know what? I'm lying. I watch so much basketball. I will definitely check in out of pure curiosity.
No, I'll check in occasionally, but I'm not gonna hate watch.
How will you feel if he's really good?
To be honest, that thought hadn't entered my mind because I just think it's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
How is he going to be good as the number one option on a team? We've seen
he won't be. I think Scoot's going to be the number one option.
Okay, so he'll be the number 2 or number 3 to Jeremy Grant.
Yeah, and they also have Simons who likes to shoot. So.
And they have Simons too.
Is he in the same order offensively than on the Portland Trail Blazers as he was on the Suns? I don't know.
Okay, so you said B minus.
Yeah,
I'm going to go with a C.
Yeah, I think that's a fair
I'm going to go with a C because there's a real concern here. I don't believe I just don't agree with the assessment that you had to move off Ayton like 100%, and couple that with the possibility that Nurkic misses half of this season because he's just being himself.
This is purely hypothetical.
That would be bad. It would be bad.
If the Suns players, the ones that have sway, were like, I don't want to play with him anymore, please trade him. Do you have to get off of him then, or would you still keep him even though they would be unhappy?
You have to get off him.
Okay.
If what Book and KD say goes.
I'm going to reiterate.
Whether that's the right way to run an organization or not doesn't really matter because
often when guys are traded, we start to hear the truth afterwards, so maybe we'll hear something over the next few. If anyone needs to chime in, it's Zach Lowe who needs to explain what he's been talking about with people being unhappy with DeAndre Ayton because he has
You know who I feel like would talk?
Windhorst.
No, you need a player who has been around both of these guys over the past few years, who is
Chris
no
Paul.
longer. No, let me finish. You need a player who has been around them over the past few years, who is a wild card, is no longer on the Suns, the type of person who would maybe seize their 15 minutes of fame and just like go off on a situation. You know who would do that?
I think I can guess. Yes,
Campaign would do that.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Jay Crowder.
Oh, Jay Crowder would do that too. Jay Crowder actually maybe is even a better answer. I feel like Jay
he
Crowder
doesn't even
Campaign,
like the Suns, so he can go out there and say whatever he wants.
Chris Paul is too diplomatic. He's not going to say shit.
Yeah,
you
but
get
he
Jay
might
Crowder
say
Campaign
something
on a
like
podcast, they might say something interesting.
Chris Paul might say something that says nothing but says everything at the same time. You know what I mean? Something sarcastic like, "Oh, I could see that one coming," or something like that. By the way, since the trade has happened, two people of note have said things like, first of all, Woj went on to SportsCenter and said the Suns were ready to move on from DeAndre Ayton. That's the only thing he said so far. That's the level of reporting we have. But they were done with him, basically. And I think no surprise to anyone that saw what the trade was. And then the other thing, too, was Kevin O'Connor, who said that Kevin Durant and Devin Booker just didn't trust DeAndre Ayton.
That's what I was saying. Why would they?
That's the most that we have right now. And I think when you're talking about what level of consistency is needed for a championship, we're talking about the legacies of Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal at this point. And that was what James Jones was figuring out. So, yes, maybe they didn't have to move on from him. Maybe you're right. Are you talking about saving him to move him later, or just not making a trade at all and just playing with DeAndre Ayton throughout the season?
Either or.
Well, we're talking about it becomes a lot harder to trade. You couldn't have included Toumani Camara. Maybe you're happy about that part, but if it was salary reasons that they included him, you couldn't have done that after this year. They really did have somewhat of a time limit in order to get this done due to the salary constraints that exist with the second apron team. It's a weird day.
Devin Booker is the last remaining player from the finals team. And that was
Kevin
2
Young
years ago.
having wine after a game, talking about the old days, because Kevin Young's the only one left, as James Jones pulls the strings.
Yeah.
Anything you want to say about Deandre Ayton before we go here? Because one thing I will say is I hope he does succeed. I think I have less faith than a lot of other people do that he can be the player that a lot of people want him to be. But I do think he can be an effective NBA player as he was on this team. It's just about a mindset shift, and maybe a trade is all it takes for him. The other part is I'll say is I never disliked him as a person. He was always funny. He was always fun. It was fun to cover him a lot of the times because he was fun and funny. And that part, I think, is something that I will miss, especially with Grayson Allen coming in return, who's a player that I actually like how he plays basketball and dislike his personality. So it's a little bit different of a change here for me. But do you have anything else you want to say about that before we go?
No, just that DA has a great personality. I don't think anyone ever questioned that, really. We saw it from the second he came into the league, dancing to Carly Rae Jepsen or whatever it was with Mo Bamba. Like, that was the first thing we ever saw from him.
And the picture of him dunking on Embiid.
Yeah, dunking. I mean, like, there are so many moments with him over the years, but it's just...
There's clearly one best moment of his time with the Suns, right? The value, it has to be, right?
Oh, I thought you were talking about off-court stuff. Yeah, basketball-wise, no doubt that was the best. But the toxic conversation that clouded him for years became exhausting for everyone to cover as well, to the point where I just kind of, at a certain point, I just didn't want to talk about him anymore.
Yeah,
I felt like often we were just avoiding the subject just because we didn't want to deal with it. And I hate feeling like that.
I absolutely did, and that was something that I try not to do.
Yeah, closing the book. Here's to a new chapter. I'm not sure we talked to anyone who was on the ledge 40 minutes ago. I'm not sure we did a great job of talking them off the ledge. I'm going to be honest in this episode. I think we laid out.
They're going to be really good. I think they're going to be really, and when they're all healthy and Nurkic is in there, that offense is going to be unbelievable.
There's a path.
It's going to be similar to
there's a path for them to be better. No
Bogut on the Warriors is kind of what it reminds me of.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to try to picture the types of things he could do, because those three guys being that good off the ball, and then Bogut making passes to cutters and shooters, that's what Nurkic can do on this team when he's healthy.
Okay. Also, believe me, I want to go back to my vacation, so I want to put the mic down. But before we do that, can I just get your 30-second take on Dame with the Bucks? Because we didn't cover that.
Yeah, that's a good point. They're going to be really good. I wish that we got Drew Holiday in the trade. Not to.
Could you imagine?
It would have been amazing.
Oh my God!
It would have been perfect, and his contract is pretty good right now. It would have actually worked money wise. And I don't really. I guess what we're seeing is that the Trailblazers are just going to move on from him, and he's not meant to be there. They're just using him as another trade asset. But it's funny because reports recently were that Miami they held the belief that they could win the Eastern Conference without Damian Lillard and weren't going to bend over backwards to try to trade him to Miami. And now I look at the situation where Damian Lillard is on the Bucks, and I think, you sure about that?
You sure about that?
You sure about that? Because I don't think you can believe that anymore now.
Yeah,
that's the best 1-2 punch of superstars that we've seen in a long time. I think the only comparable one at this point is probably Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, and that means that we in a perfect world, in a world where everything's written in stone, we get a rematch.
I don't think anyone's putting Miami on the same tier as Boston and Milwaukee now. Right? They're just not.
I think Miami could beat Boston because we just saw them do it, but
they
lost players, by the way.
They could do it. They could do it again, but they're not the favorite.
No.
They needed this trade.
Yeah.
Played their cards a little bit too close to the chest. Oh, well.
All right, so we will, and by the way, I'm grateful we waited to do some of the things we are planning on doing in the future, which includes an over-under episode coming up soon, but we will be back soon with that episode. Of course, if you want to follow along with extra podcasts, once we're back from vacation, which will be next week for me, we will get back to doing weekly Patreon episodes as well. You can get those at patreon.com/thetimeline. $6 a month for an extra podcast every week. $3 if you'd like to join our Discord as well, which is included with both tiers. But thank you, everyone. I'm excited to do a little more research, watch a little more film, and then we'll be back to talk about that next week.
For over a century, Johnny Walker has shared its bold spirit with the game of golf. Now, crafted with Devereaux Golf, Johnny Walker introduces the Johnny Walker Blue Label-inspired Sunday Golf Bag, elevating the game with sleek design, Blue Label hues, and refined gold accents. Celebrate your hole-in-one with a premium Sunday bag crafted by Devereaux Golf. Submit proof of your achievement to johnnywalker.com/blue-in-1. Please drink responsibly.